Hey, it's so nice to see you back here for part three. And yesterday I left you on a little bit of a cliffhanger in that I was talking about when your child's cup is very full, that is when they are operating from the lowest part of their brain. And that's what I'm going to focus on supporting you with today, some neuroscience, some basic understandings of brain development and how and why that is impacting your child's emotions and behaviors just now. So let me share my screen again. Here we go. Okay, so brain development basics. Only 25% of the brain is fully developed at birth. And the great news is that the brain is not fully developed in a human being until between 25 and 28 years of age. So we have got plenty of time to be rewiring, working on those neural pathways, creating different connections that are for healthier coping strategies and better long-term emotional and relational health. Such good news. And then even after that, what we now know is um, that there is something called neuroplasticity, which means that our brain, is basically malleable, plasticky. We can still change the connections and neural pathways right up until the day we die. So, good news. You'll see the picture of the brain there, the neocortex, the limbic brain, and the brainstem. Now, let me explain those a little bit further. The neocortex is the human part of the brain. That is the part where that makes us human essentially. So it's things like problem solving, reflective thinking, metacognition, which is a big word that basically means um, noticing how we feel and adding it together with why we might be feeling that way and processing that in our brain and turning it into language and then explaining out loud why we are feeling the way that we're feeling or what we're feeling. Things like language skills, all the things that set us apart from the rest of the animals on the planet, basically, are within the neocortex. Then we've got the limbic region, and that's the mammalian brain. So that's the part of our brain that we share with our mammal relatives. And that part of the brain is very much to do with our emotional centers. It's where our fight, flight, freeze center is stored. That the amygdala you might have heard of before, that is in the limbic region. And then we've got our brain stem, which is the lowest part of our brain. It sits under the neocortex and then under the limbic system. And that is the part that we share in common with our reptilian relatives. And that is in control of all our basic functions that we don't have to think about. So our heart rate, pupil dilation, our breathing rate, although we obviously do have some control over that. This is a model of understanding the brain that I really like to use with the parents that I work with to help you understand what is happening when your child is having a big feeling, a meltdown or a worry spiral. So if you follow along with me, if you like, pop your hand up. Tuck your thumb into the center of your palm and then curl your fingers over the top of your thumb. That is a very basic hand model of the brain. The fingers wrapping over represent the neocortex. The thumb in the middle represents the mammalian brain, and then our brainstem kind of sits at our wrist here. And what happens in very simplistic terms when your child is experiencing strong and painful feelings, is having a meltdown, is going into a worry spiral, is that they do something called flipping their lid, which you can see on the screen there, okay? The neocortex becomes somewhat untethered from the limbic brain and the reptilian brain. And the reason that happens more so in children is because the neural pathways that connect those three parts of the brain together aren't really strong yet. Over time, your child will start to develop a metaphorical staircase between each region of the brain, which means that they stick together a little bit better. And when they stick together a little bit better, and they can travel, the information can travel up and down throughout the different regions more easily through that metaphorical staircase. What happens then is this neocortex part can look after the limbic brain and the reptilian brain, it can be a little bit more in charge. So as an adult, when we have a big feeling, we do all flip our lids sometimes. That's very normal and very human. But largely, when we have a big feeling, we can think our way through it. We can use our cognitive skills to work our way through it, to problem solve, to reflect, to maybe suggest to ourselves some things that might make us feel better in the moment and look after that limbic brain. But children don't have very much capacity or capability to do that yet. And historically, we are moving from a cycle of control and compliance to a cycle of connection and cooperation. And the control and compliance approach is a top-down approach, a behaviorist approach. So we look at the behavior and we use our cognitive thinking to rationalize and reason and squash the behavior down. That's largely what our parents used when they were parenting us. But it's not working that well for many, many of our children, and particularly our more sensitive children. Because when a child is functioning, when they have flipped their lid and they are therefore functioning from their limbic brain and brainstem, they don't have much access to their neocortex. So they find it very hard and potentially impossible, depending on their age, to do things like reflective thinking, problem solving, even processing language is a big jump for them. What this part of the brain is to do with the lower part of their brain, it likes a bottom-up approach, okay? And a bottom-up approach is starting from the lower part of the brain and going upwards. The top-down approach is starting with the neocortex, the reasoning, the rationalizing, the thinking, the communication in general to try and solve the behavior. And that doesn't work very well with children when they flip their lid. What works better is a bottom-up approach, okay? So what this part of the brain, what the limbic brain and the reptilian brain are doing is they are scanning the environment, external and internal, to check whether they are safe or not. And safety has a lot to do with the sensory system. So they can take in sensory information. They can't take in communication particularly well, but they take in sensory information really well. And what I mean by that is, for example, if your child is having a meltdown, in terms of what you are doing, what you're saying is kind of neither here nor there. But what your child's limbic brain is taking in is proximity, the kind of tension in your face or softness in your face. Are you looking angry or are you looking calm and relaxed and or like you want to help them? It's taking in eye contact, it's taking in touch, it's taking in all those sensory elements that might make it feel more safe or not. And to the degree that the senses are picking up safety, is the degree where this part of the brain is going to come back online or not. Okay, so the more safe this part feels through the senses. So in terms of you, that's proximity, that's eye contact, that's touch, that's tone of voice, but also the environment around them and also what's going on for them internally. So if there's lots of shame there, that's going to keep this flipped up for longer. And if there's lots of noise in the background or bright colours or it's quite an intense environment that they're in, that's going to keep this lid flipped metaphorically. But if the environment around them feels safe, maybe you've taken them outside or you've taken them to the car or somewhere that's a bit more contained and there's less people and there's less sensory stimulus going on. And maybe internally, because you've done lots of great work on boosting their self-confidence and their self-esteem and so the shame that they're maybe feeling about having a meltdown in public or whatever is starting to dissipate, then this part can come back online. And when this part is back online, that is the time to communicate about what might be better next time. What do they need in that moment? How could you help them to how could you have helped them to stop having that meltdown in the first place? All of those things happen when we use a bottom-up approach first. So that is the end of my 3 parts on the basics of understanding the kind of functionalities of a highly sensitive child. obviously, this is just the tip of the iceberg. If you go to my website, there's so much more information, there's more resources, and there are various different ways that I can help you to support your child if they are struggling and if you need it. But over the next 10 days, I'm going to send you a few more emails to give you even more information that's going to help you to feel even more empowered as to how to support your child with those meltdowns, those rages, those worry spirals, those anxieties, whatever it is your child is facing. The next few emails are going to help you to dig down even more into just the right things for your child. So I hope that the last three little mini sessions have been helpful for you. If you have any questions, please do email me or do head to my website or my Instagram page where you'll find lots more information and tips and advice. Take care.